Healthy plants grow from healthy soil, whether in an open field or contained in a controlled system like a high tunnel. High tunnels are an excellent tool for farmers to create a microclimate that helps extend the growing season, but require close attention to maintain soil health. There are a few basic steps that farmers can follow to ensure soil health in their tunnel systems, like removing plant debris and clearing and cleaning unnecessary plastic mulches, stakes, or drip tape after cropping seasons to minimize pest and disease issues. This also includes preparing and sending soil samples for analysis in advance of each crop to determine what amendments are needed, as well as to identify soluble salt levels. Many soil testing labs are also able to test compost, which is helpful to ensure appropriate application ratios.
So compost also, it's really helpful to use in high tunnels, especially when you have production of, let's say, vegetables there during the winter time. It's pretty important to prepare a compost that it's low in soluble salts, meaning that when you are formulating your compost, try not to include much of the broiler manure or the chicken manure, because they carry a lot of salts in their manure, and put it in a lower ratio. The other thing, most of the food that we have, even if we are recycling it, it has a lot of salt in it. And so that also have to be put in a lower ratio. So whenever you are preparing your compost, even if you are doing browns, greens, and high green, try to make a diverse components from it, meaning that some of it from the plant material, some of it from the grass, some of it from the food that you are recycling, a little bit of manure versus, let's say, more of soybean and sunflower in it. Plant material, let's say you have roses, you have something in the garden that you want to recycle, it will really be good. The more you add more of that to chicken manure or other manure that it is really high in salt, it will cause more of the compost to be high in salt. One thing that you could also do is that you let the soil, the compost, when it is curing, let the water go through it. When that will allow the salt go down to the ground. Now, when you collect your compost, collect it from the upper part, and that lower part, try not to use it as much. You could use it probably on the soil and with combination of other good soil, but the less you have electrical conductivity, the less salt, your high tunnel would be, plants would be better used. Why? Because in the high tunnel, most of the time we are using drip irrigation, meaning that we are not using enough water and there is no rain on that plant because it is covered with the high tunnel. And that's why it is better to start with a compost that it is low in high salt. And so with time, when it is there, even with drip irrigation, because it would be minimal amount of water putting there, and the evaporation that happens, you are not risking your plants to and your soil to build that salt in it. One thing to keep in mind when you are applying the compost in the high tunnels, do not apply too much at the first year. Probably 1 ton per acre would be more than enough. And then after 2 or 3 years, check again your soil, test it again and see how much nutrients in it, because what happens, your phosphorus starts build up there. And then when there would be imbalance in nutrients, even if your salt is high, you need to let the water go through that. Maybe you can apply some water more in depth for that soil before you put the new compost when you want to put it there. So an application of 1 ton per acre would be more than enough or even less, depends on how much your soil really requires the nutrients.
We also apply compost in our high tunnels, but what we apply typically is once a year we'll put the worm castings on. We usually have enough worm castings. We feel that's a higher quality ingredient. Now with all compost you will have a little salt buildup. Our high tunnels all have overhead watering systems, so we can actually put on to enough water to leach once a year. I like to leach when we have an actively growing cover crop. That gives us our best opportunity to put excess water on to move any nutrients that have the opportunity to build up in a high tunnel.
Using compost may help to provide support to replace beneficial bacteria and fungi that may be lost during sanitization procedures or even as a result of soil disturbance. Another method to provide support for the soil is planting cover crops. Cover crops help fix nitrogen, provide biomass like organic matter and organisms, and provide structure to retain the soil matrix. Some cover crops, like barley, may even be able to help reduce soluble salt levels.
We've used cover crops in our high tunnels since we built the high tunnels. So our philosophy on high tunnels is we need to treat them pretty much the way we treat our crops outside. And we try to follow that footprint of how our processes evolve.
Kaitlyn Horst of Redefined Grafted Vegetables works with Steve Groff at Cedar Meadow Farm to grow acres of heirloom tomatoes under cover in Haygrove high tunnels. At the end of the growing season, the tomato plants, high tunnel plastic, and ground cloth are removed, and a cover crop including triticale and hairy vetch is sown to protect the soil throughout the winter. After the tunnels are recovered in the spring, drip tape is installed and a black woven ground cloth is secured over the tape and green cover crop. The cloth smothers the cover crop and serves as a mulch throughout the growing season. This method of cover crop termination allows for minimal soil disturbance and retains the root structure of the cover crops, including the nitrogen-fixing legume nodules, which help ensure nutrient availability, as well as providing quality soil structure for the new tomato plants. To learn more about high tunnel soil health or other high tunnel related topics, visit hightunnelnetwork.org.